winter semester starting to wrap up, that means that more time is soon on the way for catching trains, especially since late spring, early summer is just around the corner. Now, there really isn't too much to discuss right here at the very beginning because things have pretty much been the same over the last couple of months. However, I was able to scout out some new locations along the railroad because I wanted to try something different and broaden my horizons, and I believe I was successful in doing so. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our story. We begin this month's train escapades at the Central Ohio Model Railroad Club on April 2nd, 2026. While assisting the other club members in the construction of our new layout, at one point I would take a break and end up catching a very short NS-271 going up the Sandusky District on its daily journey between Rickenbacker Yard in Columbus, Ohio, and Landers Yard in Chicago, Illinois, with an increasingly rare Dash 9 liter today. Before uncharacteristically leaving early today, I noticed on the Railstream camera at CP Tweed that this train was on the radar for the Sandusky District. With that knowledge in hand, I decided to move just up the road from the Model Railroad Club to the Schrock Road Railroad crossing for the catch. I didn't get the symbol of this southbound mixed freight train, but I have reason to believe it's 18W on its daily journey between Bellevue, Ohio, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina. A neat treat was in store for the rail fans this evening, which came in the form of SD60E 6990 trailing third, a locomotive type that Norfolk Southern doesn't really use on road trains that much anymore. A new location was found several days later on April 6, 2026, alongside CSX's Columbus subdivision and Norfolk Southern's Western branch. The new location in question alongside the railroad was the Scioto Autobahn Metro Park of Columbus, Ohio. I would only see one train for this first visit over here, and it was definitely a good one. CSX Foreign Movement Z744, which runs on a weekly round trip between Newark, Ohio and Columbus, Ohio, and runs as Ohio Central NKPA when on home rails. A trio of SD60Ms would be in charge of Z744 today, with the outbound run back to Newark being led by a former Union Pacific Triclops equipped with a really nice Leslie RS3L, which you're hearing the after effects of right now. I would find myself back on the Columbus subdivision a couple days later on April 8th, 2026, but this time being a little closer to home at the Hyatts Railroad Crossing. After finding out class was not in session today, I noticed CSX M356 was deviating from its usual route on the Scottslawn Secondary. Since pure convenience was at play here, I decided to pull over in hopes of catching it. While this technically is a mixed freight train, it's not M356, but rather CSX local freight L457 on its daily journey between Walbridge, Ohio and Columbus, Ohio. Another weekly visit was in order for the Central Ohio Model Railroad Club the following day on April 8th, 2026. Unfortunately, not a lot of progress was made on the new layout during the time I was here today. While I was here, I managed to catch Norfolk Southern Intermodal 271 as he was slowly making his way northbound up the Sandusky District on his daily journey between Columbus, Ohio and Chicago, Illinois. Even with two AC slop C6Ms in charge of 271 today, the trailing 3993 was still pretty shiny, as evident from a recent rebuild, which is one of the few 3900 series GEs that stayed with Norfolk Southern, as the others were either sold off before or after the rebuild. I would make a second visit to the Scioto Autobahn Metro Park a couple of days later on April 10th, 2026. Since I had the morning to myself, I decided to come over here to catch some trains. The first of which that has permanently landed itself on my target list was CSX Foreign Movement Z744 on its weekly round trip between Newark, Ohio and Columbus, Ohio, but this time coming into Parsons as opposed to coming out of Parsons. Now I understand there's a lot of vegetation next to the tracks that are blocking my view, so I was looking for a spot that provided me with a clear view, which I found was graciously provided to me by the Whittier Street overpass by the time a southbound appeared on Norfolk Southern's western branch. The southbound in question was a new one for me. Coming off of the Dayton district at LM Cabin just north of me was Norfolk Southern Intermodal 278 on its daily journey between Kansas City, Missouri and Norfolk, Virginia. While there is a chain link fence on the Whittier Street overpass, the holes are just big enough for me to stick my cell phone's camera in between them, but just small enough for my phone to not fall through them. Full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of going away shots because you're just looking at the backs of the locomotives as opposed to the fronts of the locomotives. Since the Metro Park is the only other safe place where I can watch southbound traffic from both railroads, I'm willing to compromise in getting a going away shot from time to time as opposed to a normal shot hampered by vegetation. Running up to the overpass yet again, a southbound would appear on CSX's Columbus subdivision after the passage of the NS 278. Only a couple of miles away from finishing its daily journey between Selkirk, New York and Columbus, Ohio, was CSX mixed freight train M635, with a very peculiar all-EMD lash-up on the head end, featuring a trio of SD70 Max and a GP38-3. Unfortunately, breaking the illusion for the EMD supremacists out there, a GE product would be bringing up the middle of the train as the DPU, a brand new rebuilt CM44AH that just rolled out of the Erie, Pennsylvania shops a few weeks ago. The problem that I was having with southbound traffic would go away as soon as a northbound would show up on CSX's Columbus subdivision. With a solo SD70 Mac leader and a good friend of mine in the conductor's seat today, only a couple of miles into the daily journey between Columbus, Ohio and Chicago, Illinois, was CSX mixed freight train M357. This train is fairly new as it was added to the CSX system quite recently to replace M246. After the head end of M357 went underneath me, they would get stuck at CP River just north of me for about 30 minutes to get permission to come onto the Scottslong secondary. But after that 30 minutes went by, they did get permission to go onto the Scottslong secondary and started moving again. With M357 going on to the Scottslong secondary, I had to break off and head home as there were other important tasks I needed to complete today. However, a funny case of deja vu would occur when I managed to catch my friend on the M357 again, but this time at the Cosgray Road Railroad crossing on the Scottslong secondary. Actual Class 2 trackage would see my cameras a couple days later on April 13th, 2026, when I visited the Ohio Central Newark Rail Yard in Newark, Ohio. The primary reason for driving all the way out here today was because I was meeting a friend from the Central Ohio Model Railroad Club who was just finishing classes at the OSU Newark campus at the time, in addition to seeing all the goodies Ohio Central usually has out here. While waiting for my friend to finish up his classes, I would end up getting super lucky and see the Ohio Central in action. From the fenced-off area on public property alongside, I would notice a yard job exiting the yard with a large cut of cars behind a pair of GP38-2s. After coming to the conclusion I would have a much better viewing experience elsewhere, I decided to move to the Y off of Yearly Street at the mouth of Ohio Central's Newark Rail Yard. Here, I would get a much better shot of the GP38-2 pair marshalling its large cut of cars, especially with the loaned I&O Jeep, which still retains its long hood-mounted bell from its days on the Southern Railway and Norfolk Southern. After spending an hour and a half catching up with my friend, I was getting ready to leave and go home for the day until some Conrail musical notes broke the silence, meaning that we would get super lucky yet again. Coming into town to finish its weekly round trip between Newark, Ohio, and CSX's Parsons Yard in Columbus, Ohio, was Ohio Central Road Job NKPA. They would stop alongside the Y, which allowed me to get some nice clear photos of the SD60 trio in charge of NKPA, which featured a pair of ex-Conrail units and a loaned ex-UP Triclops from Larry's Truck and Electric. Another new location was found back on Class 1 trackage a couple days later on April 15, 2026. Sitting crewless at the Coal Road Railroad crossing on Norfolk Southern's Dayton District was NS Manifest 178 on its daily journey between Irondale, Alabama and Bellevue, Ohio. What made 178 interesting today was the blue SD40-2 trailing second, which appears to belong to a short line based out of Colorado, but more research needs to be conducted to confirm this. On my third visit to the Central Ohio Model Railroad Club this month on April 16, 2026, progress was actually made on the new layout in addition to catching some trains as well. Before a task was given to me, I managed to catch Norfolk Southern Intermodal 266 passing outside on its daily journey between Ashland Avenue Yard in Chicago, Illinois, for Rickenbacker Yard in Columbus, Ohio. After doing some work on the bench work, I would find that the golden hour conditions would frame this northbound intermodal train very nicely. With a nice mix of domestic and international shippers, the symbol for this train was determined to be NS-271, on its daily journey between Rickenbacker Yard in Columbus, Ohio, for Landers Yard in Chicago, Illinois. I was getting notifications throughout the day that this train would be on the radar for the CSX Columbus subdivision. Unfortunately though, the wait for this train was rather agonizing, but it was totally worth it by the time it finally showed up. Making one of its last journeys through this area on its daily journey between Columbus, Ohio and Selkirk, New York was CSX mixed freight train M634. The trailing locomotive on tonight's M634 was one of CPKC's 4 hydrogen fuel cell prototypes, this one in particular being rebuilt from the core of an old GMD-built GP38-2. Almost a quarter to 11 o'clock at night, this was not the latest I stayed up for a singular train, but it's definitely up there. About a week later, on April 23, 2026, I would make an impromptu trip to the Route 161 railroad crossing on CSX's Columbus subdivision with a group of friends. We would get notified that one of the new mixed freight trains for this area had one of CSX's heritage units leading it today, so we all came together in hopes of catching it. Southbound unit grain train G779 would greet us shortly after arrival on its as-needed journey out of Garrett, Indiana for Richmond, Virginia. With a crankshaft on the way out, another southbound was in the mix behind the G779, which was recently extended local freight L339, which now runs on a daily basis between Collinwood Yard in Cleveland, Ohio, for Parsons Yard in Columbus, Ohio. Finally, the train that we were after would soon make its way northbound up the Columbus subdivision after the passage of L339. The train in question seems like a new train, but it's technically a re-symbol. CSX mixed freight train M636, which runs on a daily basis between Columbus, Ohio and Selkirk, New York. Quite a fitting leader for this train's inaugural run was CSX ES44AH 1869, the Chesapeake and Ohio Heritage Unit, the C&O being one of CSX's fallen flags that are native to this area. After that action-packed trifecta on the Columbus subdivision, we would then make our way back to the Central Ohio Model Railroad Club to assist in the construction of the new layout. When I got a break, I managed to catch Norfolk Southern Intermodal 276 as it was making its way down the Sandusky District on its daily journey between Chicago, Illinois and Norfolk, Virginia. The train would briefly stop in front of the Model Railroad Club after the lead locomotive went by, but after about 10 minutes they would get moving again. A neat surprise was seen as a mid-train DPU on 276 today, NSAC 44C6M 4001 with its special DC to AC paint scheme, aka Sonic the Hedgehog. Class 2 trackage would get another visit from me on a very special day, April 25th, 2026, at the Fairborn Cement Company in Blacklick, Ohio. Off of the Ohio Central CNN subdivision and the main industry served by the ECL local, I was here today for a very special train. Traveling eastward on the CNN subdivision on a round trip between Columbus, Ohio and Denison, Ohio, was an America 250th charter passenger train, with a very unique consist to boot with vintage passenger cars, pulled by SD60Ms 2516 and 2400, wearing America 250th and Veterans paint respectively. folks, that pretty much concludes today's video. I was able to find quite a few new locations along the railroad to catch certain trains and actually able to fit the monthly compilation for this month in the narration style video format. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like or a comment down below to share your thoughts. Subscribe if you're new, and tap the notifications bell if you want to be notified when a new video gets posted here on the channel just like this. Until next time, this is All Ohio Rail Fan, signing off.